Today's video will be about setting personal boundaries, all right? Now, setting personal boundaries is really important for developing a healthy ego and also really just the foundation of anyone going through their healing process. So first, it's really important to cover what boundaries even are, okay? Boundaries essentially are personally defined limits and lines of where we begin and another person ends, okay? And there's different categories of boundaries, all right? There's our physical boundaries, which essentially are how people can come into physical contact with us, what our physical space is. We have our emotional boundaries, which are essentially how we allow people to come into our lives emotionally, how we express ourselves emotionally with others, all right? Do we allow ourselves to take on certain people's emotional baggage? We have spiritual boundaries, and I feel like this encompasses just belief systems, how we view the world, how we view our environment, and how we view concepts beyond the self and I. Now, this is a boundary I had a really difficult time with because when I was going through my spiritual awakening, I was atheist and wanted to put all my lovely beliefs onto my fiance. Now, I was infringing upon her boundaries, okay? We are allowed to have our own predefined belief systems, and we don't have to accept other people's belief systems if we don't want to. And then we also have sexual boundaries, which are very obviously how we allow people to be in our space when we want to express intimacy or anything of a sexual nature. So why are boundaries so important? Boundaries are really important because this is how we define our sense of self. This is how we cultivate a stronger relationship with our inner self. But more so than anything else, setting boundaries allows one to escape the pitfall of resentment. You see, when we don't set boundaries with other people, that's how we breed resentment towards others. Because then we feel resentful because others are infringing upon our personal space, but we never set those limits with them, right? So people don't always are mind readers and know the answers. We have to give them the answers of what we need, of what we want from them. Because if we don't, how can they possibly know sometimes? And this gets when we start feeling being taken advantage of. When we build boundaries, it allows ourselves to step into a healthy ego and to this feeling of other people not overutilizing us or taking over advantage of us. It also allows one to cultivate feelings of safety and security within, okay? There's a sense of stability when we have our predefined limits of knowing what we feel is comfortable and what doesn't allow ourselves to feel really good in that space. It also allows one to develop more closer and more intimate relationships and friendships, okay? You're going to build a circle of people that aren't taking advantage of you, right? That really like you for you and not because they can just throw their emotional baggage onto you. And it also, when we develop boundaries, it also allows us to better express ourselves, to find that voice. Now, why do we have poor boundaries? I had absolutely terrible boundaries once upon a time. And a lot of people who've been through some trauma have poor boundaries as well. Essentially, if you have an inability to set boundaries with other people, it's often because you were not allowed to develop this sense of self in childhood. And there's a variety of reasons for why that is, but it's usually due to a dysfunctional relationship with your caregiver. All right, so one of the reasons is that you were parentified as a child. The role between the child and the caretaker were essentially reversed. And it was your job as a child to actually fill the needs and the well-being of the parent instead of the parent taking care of you. So you always had to be consciously aware of how do I take care of the parent? What do I do for them without figuring out and cultivating your own needs? There's also enmeshment, which is essentially a false form of closeness. It's when there's too much closeness in a sense, in an unhealthy manner. It's when you're not allowed to have wants, needs, or beliefs that are different than the caretaker. If the caretaker is in a heightened, emotionally charged state, you have to be as well. If they hate this other person, you have to dislike them as well, right? Any type of individuation or any type of effort to gain some autonomy, right, is squashed by the caregiver. There's also neglect. When a caregiver is distant from us, when they're not attuned to our emotional and physical needs, right? We never learn what that personal boundaries are because we're always trying to fight for the response, for any type of attention. And more so than anything else, if you've been through physical or sexual abuse as a child, that is a horrific intrusion upon your physical space. And as a kid, you'll embody the unconscious belief even into adulthood that your body is not your own, that you're not worth even setting those personal boundaries. So then how do we learn what our personal boundaries are? We have to turn inward and begin cultivating a relationship with our inner self. We have to start feeling into what feels good to us, what feels bad to us, and not turn away these sensations. We have to start asking ourselves what our value and belief systems are, what's important to us. We also have to become more attuned and think back to the actions from people that left us feeling uncomfortable, right? When did someone do something to you on an emotional level or a physical level that made you start feeling squeamish or in disgust? That is your inner self letting you know where a boundary needed to be set. Also, think about those times you became resentful towards someone. Think about those times where you had to suppress this inner rage and anger, all right? Those were likely times where you did not set a boundary, you didn't explicitly express it, and someone infringed upon these boundaries that you didn't know you actually had. So then how do we set boundaries with others? If setting boundaries was not commonplace in your household growing up, or was not something that was responded to by your caregivers, then setting boundaries with other people will begin to feel very dangerous. Your nervous system will go into a state of fight or flight, like, oh my God, we shouldn't be setting a boundary, we're not worthy of needs. When you're setting a boundary, it's important to lean into that discomfort, to know and understand why it's there, but to set it anyway. You want to explicitly state to the person in a calm manner, this is my boundary, this is what I need from you, or let them know that they're already infringing upon a possible pre-existing boundary. You want to say it calmly, but you want to say it firmly. Also, if you grew up with poor boundaries, there's going to be this need to over-explain yourself. You don't need to. Just be firm, be short, and move on. If they question it, just keep the boundary firm. You don't have to over-explain more why you have it. People just need to respect your boundaries are for what they are. Now, you remember, there is going to be a pushback when you set a boundary with anyone who you haven't set boundaries with before, all right? They're used to a certain way with you. They're used to a certain dynamic, a certain relationship with you, right? So they're going to initially push back. You have to do your best to almost kind of let it rub off your shoulder, all right? Not take it too personally and not take it as an attack. Now, it's up to you to continue to hold that boundary, to continue to establish that. Because if that person does continue to infringe upon that boundary or continue to question you for having that, then we need to step back and reevaluate, is it worth having this person in our life, right? Setting boundaries takes some time, especially if you've never had it. But as you begin to cultivate that relationship with yourself, as you begin to understand what your needs and wants are, and as you begin to finally establish them with others, that's where we build a healthy ego. That's where we finally begin to know our true selves. And that's when we call into the relationships with others where the people will actually respect us. All right, so thank you for watching. Please make sure to subscribe to this channel. And if you have any questions for me, please comment below. Thank you.